I love reading memoirs and hearing people's life stories. Years ago, I read a book by a writer who had grown up in a middle-class American Jewish family. Her story involved an addiction to heroin starting in her late teen years and an early marriage to a man who died tragically young. In a follow-up book, she mentioned that she had rejected her Judaism and rejected Jewish life because she had seen what an unfair place the world was. And the Jewish religion couldn't really understand or acknowledge this. The idea that our early rabbis who lived 2,000 years ago could not possibly understand the depth of the tragedy of a woman born to a white middle-class American family was really very curious to me. I completely understand that anyone of any class, background, race, cultural identity can have horrible and tragic and unfair things happen to them. Of course, that's absolutely true. But it's bizarre that someone would think that Jews living 2,000 years ago who had no modern medicine, whose babies and children died on a daily basis, who had no real human rights or basic legal protections. They could be tortured, imprisoned, murdered, expelled from their homes and from their towns without any legal recourse whatsoever. That they could never understand the pain of a modern middle-class American. That just seems oddly self-centered to me.
No one understands our pain.
That aside, I think we can all agree that life can be very harsh, can be very unfair, can be very tragic for no apparent reason. And it's not just us, citizens of the 21st century world, who suddenly discovered this unknown fact. Undeserved tragedy was a daily reality for the early shapers of Jewish tradition who lived 2,000 years ago. The rabbis and sages who lived in the centuries after the destruction of Jerusalem and the Jerusalem temple in the year 70 CE. It would certainly be reasonable to wonder, do our personal choices and actions really matter, given the unfair human existence that we have all been plunged into?
That's not fair. It's not fair.
Why bother to be a good person? Why not just YOLO the whole thing?
YOLO!
Within this very uncertain world, we make daily choices about our actions and our words. Why make choices that are ethical? Why be moral? Why be good?
Everything here is open for discussion.
To be able to talk about the reason we may have as Jews to act in an ethical way, we first need to talk about fairness. Things seem fair or just to us when we feel that good is appropriately rewarded and bad is appropriately punished. Making good, ethical choices may be a harder sell in a world in which we feel the balance is seriously out of whack. So let's look at 3 ways that people can perceive the relationship between our human actions and the fairness of the outcomes. All 3 of these strands of thought can be found within Judaism. Idea number 1. Life only seems unfair to human beings, But actually, if we had more information, we would see that everything happens in a very fair and a very just way for very logical reasons that just kind of escape our human capacity for understanding. Disease and accidents, birth defects and death, all of them are doled out fairly. Results of the behavior or the words of human beings, whether human beings as individuals or human beings as populations, as groups of people. That's a no for me. There is real suffering in this world, and it is meted out to people in a way that is random and undeserved. There are those who do claim everything that happens around you makes perfect sense. There is a really excellent reason why that 4-year-old child got cancer and then died. That bride and groom who were killed by a drunk driver on the way to their wedding reception, there's an excellent reason for that, if you only understood. I completely understand why people who have been through unthinkable tragedy are drawn to this idea. Nobody wants to think that tragic events happen for no reason. And of course, I don't know for sure. Maybe they do. I just personally can't believe it. Idea number 2. Life is fair, but not on this earth. There is an extremely fair system that kicks into gear after we're dead. Reward and punishment, it's all meted out fairly, properly, but not in any way that we can see while we're alive. It will all be perfectly sorted in another dimension after we're dead. I have a lot of questions about this. If there is some incredibly foolproof, 100% accurate cosmic system for distributing reward and punishment based on everyone's actions, why aren't we seeing any of that when we're alive? Like, we don't have that system at all.
Where is it? Where is it?
And the reality is, with the exception of a very small percentage of the population, we all have good days and bad days, good minutes and bad minutes. We can be super nice to our pets, pack healthy lunches for our spouse and our children.
I am a perfectly good person.
And then that afternoon go on to snap impatiently at the supermarket checker for being inefficient and thereby making that person feel bad about themselves.
You're a bad person. You're a bad person.
What do I get for that kind of day? Rewarded for the good minutes and then punished for the bad minutes? And what if I snapped because my brain chemistry is off? Maybe I was born with some kind of imbalance. There's some kind of chemical issue that causes things to short circuit on occasion. Do I get a punishment for snapping due to some sort of brain biology problem? Or maybe I get punished, but not as much as someone who doesn't have a brain biology problem. There is so much that makes absolutely no sense to me about a perfectly fair and just system of reward and punishment that I just can't personally subscribe to it. Idea number 3. Life is unfair. Period. There isn't some larger than life mastermind planning everything out that happens. There's a lot of randomness in the world, whether it be the randomness of human behavior, the randomness of the natural world, the randomness of everything and everyone just kind of intersecting and interweaving and coming together in all kinds of ways that can't be predicted, stuff happens.
What is happening?
This is where I fall, because this is the real world that we see and we experience every single day. And I believe, as a thinking, conscious being, I have the right to take all the data I take in from the world around me, think critically about it, and then come to conclusions based on it. So back to the original question. Why should I be good? If I believe that my good behavior will somehow, somewhere be rewarded, and that if I act unethically or destructively, I will receive a punishment, I suppose that would be the perfect motivation for choosing the behavior and the words that I do. But what if I can't believe that in the end, this will really all be sorted out with perfect fairness? It means that my choices are motivated by something else. The central idea of Judaism certainly urges people to strive for lives of goodness. And that central idea is mitzvah. There is no perfect translation of the concept of the word mitzvah, but at the root of the word is the calling of every Jew to be a responsible agent for godliness in the world. A mitzvah is one individual act that I do because I am called to bring holiness to the world, to be a partner with God or a partner with godly values to heal our world. Whether I understand God to be a being or an ideal or a value. I personally translate the word mitzvah as a Jewish religious responsibility. I carry that religious responsibility within me until the day I die. To, in the words of the prophet Micah, do justice, love compassion, and to walk humbly as a partner with the holy. Years ago, my mom told me, as she learned it from her parents, that Judaism is about doing what you can to leave the world a better place than when you found it. Since that time, I have had decades of Jewish education, of professional rabbinic experience, and honestly, I think that is as good a summation of Judaism as anything else that I've learned. There is a teaching from our early rabbis. The teaching is from a collection of ethical sayings called Pirkei Avot, and it says, the consequence for doing a mitzvah is another mitzvah. The consequence for wrongdoing is another wrongdoing. Perhaps the word karma, as it's kind of used colloquially in modern conversation, is a good translation of this idea. You bring about what you bring about.
Karma, Kramer?
Do you want a life filled with mitzvot, with actions that usher holiness into the world? Do you want a life filled with selfish actions that make this world worse than it already is? Random things happen in this world. You can't choose to be ethical and compassionate so that you won't get sick or so that bad things aren't going to happen to you or people you care about. Your life is what it is due to many factors, and a good number of those factors are outside of your control. What you can control is the choices you make. As the rabbis taught many centuries ago, many things about you and your life are determined for you. All you can control is whether you are tzaddik or rasha, meaning whether you choose to be a caring and righteous person, at least someone who strives toward that, or whether you choose to live selfishly, benefiting yourself by hurting others. Ultimately, each of us must choose. But our Jewish tradition urges us, choose to use your days to uplift, to bring holiness and kindness and respect to our imperfect world.
Everything here is open for discussion.
Idea number 2. I don't know. Okay. Idea number 3. Where am I looking? Hello. Hi. That. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Oh my goodness. My goodness.